Hello and welcome to Huddersfield Town's preview show after a disappointing 2-0 defeat at Watford. To talk us through and analyse what went wrong, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by former Huddersfield Town players Craig Armstrong and Iain Dunn, alongside Andrew Gale, obviously Huddersfield Town fan and first team coach at Yorkshire County Cricket Club. How is everyone? You okay?
All good, thanks.
Excellent. Dunny, I'll start with you. Ultimately, a defeat, a disappointing one, but equally, if it wasn't for that mistake, we could quite easily have come away with something.
Quite easily, yeah. I mean, I felt Town played well in possession. They kept the ball well. They all looked like they were happy, accepting the ball off teammates. It was a half decent performance. I think, yeah, they've been 0-0 with. But you can see the way that Carlos Corberan's setting his teams up to play. They're trying to play football, keep possession of the ball. Unfortunately, today they came up against a pretty good Watford team, and couldn't quite make that final breakthrough in the final third. But overall, not a bad performance, to be brutally honest. I thought it was a decent performance, just a bit of bad luck.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it, Craig? I mean, ultimately, it was that mistake that cost us. It looked from here up in the stands that Ryan just couldn't quite see Tom Cleverley closing him down when that back pass was coming towards him. Yeah,
possibly, but also I just, again, you watch how he plays. He doesn't always play on the front foot when he's receiving the ball back from, obviously, pass backs. And I think he just misjudged the pace of the pass from his teammate. And unfortunately, it ends up in the back of the net. But he pulled off two great saves in the first half. So I think you've just got to, one thing he did show, he showed good character to come back from that. I think he had a little bit of a slash of the ball just after that. And I think then the game sort of calmed down in front of him. And he had one or two opportunities and he started playing out with a lot of ease and a lot more comfortable again on the ball.
That's the life of a goalkeeper, isn't it? I mean, they'll go and they'll make 2-3 good saves earlier in the game to keep the scores level, but ultimately it's that one mistake that'll catch the headlines.
Yeah, it's difficult because I played in defence. You give a ball away and the goalkeeper makes a mistake. It's ultimately his fault, but it's not because the ball has to get to to the goalkeeper in the first place. So maybe Lewis O'Brien puts his foot through the ball, or the centre half plays forward, and that mistake doesn't happen. But the manager wants to play out from the back and he wants him to take responsibility. And unfortunately, today he's cost a goal. But next week he'll be making saves and stopping balls going in the back of the net.
Yeah, and to be fair to Ryan Gale, he's a young keeper. Like Craig said, he's just 21 years of age. This is the first mistake ultimately that he's made in a Town shirt. And yes, it was a costly one. But equally, how many games this season have we turned around and we've said, you know what, Ryan's kept us in that game. I mean, even thinking to that Watford game earlier this year when we won 2-0, I mean, if it wasn't for him and the man of the match performance he put in on that day, we wouldn't have come away with those points. And I think we've lost Gailey. So on that, Craig, obviously, like I said, Ryan, he's made some outstanding performances since he came in at Huddersfield Town and grasped that number 1 jersey. It's like we said, the life of the keeper, but equally for him, it is his first error, isn't it, that he's made in a Huddersfield Town shirt?
Yeah, listen, everyone makes mistakes, and if he went through the whole season not making a mistake, then he wouldn't be at Huddersfield Town. He's going to learn from these errors that he does make, and he's going to grow stronger mentally. Listen, you've got to be mental to be a goalkeeper in the first place, because sometimes, there's been times when Huddersfield have dominated possession. He might never touch the ball, and you've got to be concentrating for 95, 96 minutes of the game. Listen, it's a mistake. Yes, you'll be disappointed. Yes, if that hadn't have gone in, you'd probably come away with a 0-0. I don't think Huddersfield did enough to win the game. I don't think they did enough to lose. Didn't deserve to lose the game, other than obviously the mistake. And then I think they're trying. Carlos doesn't want to lose. Won't shut up shop. Won't just take a 2-0. He'll try and go and get back into the game, and then you leave yourself a bit exposed at the back. And I think, listen, a mistake. These things happen, and I think he'll grow stronger from it.
I think Craig's just hit the nail on the head there, Iain. I mean, ultimately, if it wasn't for that mistake, the game could quite easily have ended 0-0, couldn't it?
Quite easily, and you know, when you get into the later stages of a game, you never know that, you know, Town might even go and nick it. I know, looking through rose-tinted spectacles, but that's what these kind of games are. They can be so close and on a knife edge, and it's just something like, unfortunately for today, for Ryan Schofield, is an error which he mustn't dwell on. Like Craig says, you know, that isn't going to be his first mistake, and I absolutely guarantee it will not be his last. So he mustn't do that. But Town, it's one of those games, the longer you stay in it, the more jittery Watford might have just become, and Town suddenly might have had a little sneaky chance of stealing it. I agree with Craig. I think the game, it was probably a 0-0, really. It was a decent, two pretty good teams, well organised, good on the ball. Possession-wise was fairly equal, and Watford got the break. And that's sometimes how these games can be decided. It's just, you know, one instance in a match can change everything. And unfortunately today that did for Town. But like I say, he mustn't dwell on it. He must think about the positives and the positive impact he's had on the side, certainly this season and going into the future.
And I think we've got Gailey back with us now. I mean, Gailey, you've spent time looking at the Huddersfield Town's academy and how we train young players. A lot of those lads that were out on the pitch today, I'm sure you've seen training on the top pitches at Canalside. I mean, for those guys, the experience of getting this opportunity to come into the first team when there are so many injuries. I mean, 11 first team players out missing this game. For those guys, this experience will help grow them even further and help push their development on.
Yeah, I'm sure they're disappointed with the loss today, but it can only be good for Huddersfield Town because, you know, you don't always get opportunity to play young players, especially in modern day football where managers are so under pressure for the jobs. They always go for the more experienced players. So to give a few of them lads the opportunity, I think when the other players come back, they'll have found out about a few players. You know, I'm sure someone like Lee Bromby, who's brought them through the academy and is now director of football, it will have been a proud moment for him today, seeing them lads go out on the field, and they'll have learned some valuable lessons. And if Huddersfield Town pick 1, 2, 3 players up out of this period of when there's a lot of injuries, then it can only be a bonus.
Yeah, absolutely. And we spoke a lot about, obviously, the mistake that led to the goal, but from a defensive point of view, Craig, I mean, before that goal went in, personally, I felt like the back three in particular, Romany Critchlow, Romani Edmonds-Green and Alex Vallejo, marshalled Watford's front line really well. And the game plan, you could see it paying off and it frustrating Watford.
Yeah, you say frustrating. I actually don't think Watford were very good. The fact that they've got an experienced front line, they've obviously got to spend a lot of money on the squad. They're still paying big money to some big stars. I felt you've got two young boys playing either side of the Spanish boy, who I thought were outstanding. And you know, I looked at the sort of where they've been and where they've played, and they haven't played much football. They might be 20, 21-year-old, but they've not played any football. This is a sort of baptism of fire against good quality, and they're not going to come up against anyone like Deeney week in, week out, who's aggressive, who's going to throw his arms in your face. These boys have stood the task, and even when they went to 4 at the back, they've still had to handle it and deal with it. And, you know, on another day, you don't concede the first goal. You're right, you don't lose a game of football, but they're going to get stronger. And one thing is for certain, when you do get boys back fit, there's going to be clubs sniffing around these young talent. You know, Scotty Hyde coming on, Jones coming on, still 17. O'Brien keeps stepping up to the plate week in, week out. You know, shows that he's got ability, good talent. So it's good. It's good future for the football club, and it's just hopefully you can keep a hold of the young stars that you've got.
Yeah, you mentioned Romani Edmonds-Green and Romany Critchlow there. They've obviously been out on loan spells to gain some first team experience. But Alex Vallejo, who you mentioned and singled out there, Craig, I mean, he's had 2 appearances in the last 12 months. And he went out and put a performance out there like that. He looked assured on the ball, didn't he? He dealt with the physical threats really well. he could be a real asset to the team. Now he's getting fitter and fitter.
Well, I'm glad you said the name rather than me, because I couldn't pronounce it properly. But, you know what? You're right. Two appearances, and actually where he's come from, is it from second division in Spain? Yes, he's had a sort of a start, and I think it was at Mallorca, I think it was. He's got a good experience. However, he's still sort of what you class as naive to Championship football, a little bit inexperienced of the English game. So, again, the goal does change games, and mistakes and do cost results. But, you know, if this isn't your starting back three as normal, I think they've done themselves justice. I think it's only positive for the Huddersfield Town.
Yeah, and then we touched upon the academy lads. Obviously, Scott High and Pat Jones came on in the second half, Ian. I mean, for me, Scott High, he's had so much energy, didn't he, in that game?
Yeah, just, you know, it's a credit to the youth system there that players are actually getting a chance. And like the guys have said, it's only going to stand Huddersfield in good stead in the future. And Craig mentioned about, you know, maybe top higher level clubs coming in for them. But for Huddersfield to have these players coming through, it might turn out that they're, you know, this could be the future team, you know, with a few additions maybe. But if you've got a hard core of young lads coming through who are you'll all be keen. I mean, for professional football, you're going to be keen. But if you're a young lad, everyone on this forum will know, if you're a young lad coming into a team, you've got that extra little bit of zip about you. You want to prove to people what, you know, why you're in the team. And I just thought it's exciting times for Town. They've got what appears to be a really good manager who's worked with a lot of youth and young players in his time, and it looks promising. When the players that are injured come back in, they might struggle to get back in if these lads can progress and keep maturing as they are doing. No, it's exciting. It's exciting times. And you mentioned one of the lads there, but I thought I think they all did themselves quite proud today, and given themselves a real base to try and progress their careers, hopefully at Huddersfield Town.
Yeah, and Gailey, obviously, Rolando Aarons was making his Sky Bet Championship debut for the club as well. We saw him for about 20 minutes in the FA Cup against Plymouth, but there were glimpses of what he can do. He's another one who hasn't really had a lot of game time in the last kind of 12 to 18 months, but there were flashes in his movement and some of his touches where there's a lot of promise there.
Yeah,
I thought it looked exciting. I thought he showed pace. He showed that he could beat a man. He had a few tricks. I thought he was unlucky. One as a corner, which didn't get given, which could have led to a goal. He looks sprightly. He's a young lad. He's only going to get better. So I think they've got a decent package there. You know, only time will tell if he's good enough. Craig mentioned about being hardened to Championship football. I think that's probably one of the biggest shocks that the young lads who come through at this level find, is adjusting to the physicality of Championship football. So only time will tell whether he can. But he certainly looked a handful for their right back at times. And I thought the lad on the other wing row, I thought he showed promise as well. He looked like he had a bit of pace. He looked a bit lightweight, but he's still a kid as well. But yeah, exciting times, as Dunny said, giving these young players a chance. It can only be good. And in an ideal world, I think you'd blood one or two or three of them at once, not 9, 10, 11. But that's just, I guess, COVID football. A lot of football clubs are struggling getting teams out on the park at the minute, I think.
Yeah, that's just the situation I think that we're in at the moment. Craig, in terms of moving forwards and driving forwards with the ball, we didn't create a lot of chances. We had a couple of efforts. Juninho Bacuna had a couple. Scott High had one as well. In the second half, we looked a bit more of an attacking threat, switched the ball a little bit more, which seemed to help us move up the pitch. Is that what you think we needed to do a little bit more?
I just think it wasn't as free-flowing as what I've seen in recent weeks. Just the final ball. Listen, you have these days, you've got to give Watford credit that, that as soon as Huddersfield were in possession of the football, the high press, the tempo they played at, and then when the ball was turned over in sort of transition to Watford, Huddersfield were the same, high press, high tempo, with not real much quality as such within both final thirds, if I'm being honest, other than the two saves that obviously the goalkeepers had to make for Huddersfield. I don't think we really tested Watford. However, again, the game becomes stretched because you go 1-0 down, then you go 2-0 down, you start sort of chasing the game, and I think Watford just sort of managed the game out a little bit. It's just one of these games. Sometimes it doesn't happen, and I think again we keep going back to the mistake, and you're probably looking at a 0-0 all over the place if that doesn't happen. Just unfortunately for the goalkeeper, it did, and you just maybe need that little bit of a final edge or a cutting edge with Aaron's not being fully fit. Young boys coming on, Jones, who's still trying to get up to speed, and so it's difficult. And one thing I would like to say is obviously Fraser Campbell. I watch him week in, week out, and his work rate's immense. And I just feel like it's difficult for him to show what he can do, and he's showcasing his skills and what he's about, scoring goals, because today it's been a bit difficult to get the ball up to him. The service hasn't been top to him. I think we were quite loose in midfield in the first half on a couple of times where Watford counter-attacked. But listen, it's football for you. They're in transition, new manager, young kids coming through, great recruitment at the football club. I think Lee Bromby spoke about in commentary about how good the recruitment is. And the one thing you would say is this football club has an unbelievable opportunity for kids who are coming in. They're going to get opportunities with this manager.
Yeah, and there's been one kind of big talking point that we haven't discussed yet, Iain. Troy Deeney's tackle on Juninho Bacuna after about half an hour. He was obviously booked for that. I mean, the supporters on social media thought maybe he got away with one there. What was your take on it?
It was, I mean, he'll say it was a striker's challenge, because that's just Troy Deeney. Troy Deeney's got that in his locker. I personally, when I saw it, I was, that was a horrible challenge, horribly late. I'm borderline. I think it was a terrible. Any other striker, you think it's just a bad striker's challenge. We don't know how to. Strikers don't know how to tackle. Troy Deeney's got a little bit of form, and if the referee, I know you've got to take each case, as you see it, but there looked a little bit of malice in it to me. He was late, a little bit of malice. Yellow was probably right, Adam, but it looks terrible. And if it had been a red, I don't think anyone would really have been able to argue against that.
Dunny, do you reckon if that's in the Premier League, he gets a straight red?
We need to look at the cameras. Yeah, you're right. He'd be off, and that's the way to look at it. He'd have been off.
Yeah, you'd think kind of VAR in the Premier League might perhaps change that decision. I suppose, though, Craig, the most kind of frustrating thing with that is obviously Troy Deeney was booked. If he's not getting sent off in that moment, should the play go on a little bit longer? Because I mean, the through ball from Juninho Bacuna went straight to Rolando Aarons in the box. He's beaten the man to the ball, but the referee's already blown his whistle.
Yeah, you've got a point there. I think the Premier League referees have sort of managed that really well, where they're now allowing offsides and fouls, a lot of free flowing football, and possibly letting it run out to a finish and then pulling it back. And I think the thing is, it was a bad tackle. I was the same as Dunny. It was like a little bit. And actually, when you saw it in slow motion and actual replay to you, thought that's actually quite naughty. I think half an inch higher, and that is a blatant red card. But if it was on our side in Huddersfield and one of our strikers did that, you'd be going, it's a bit harsh if he was sent off. You thought, if you look at it, he's committed to it. But yeah, listen, the referee's got to. Again, I thought the referee managed the game quite well. He let a lot of things go. Yeah. Again, I suppose in the context of where it was on the touchline. He possibly thought there was no. If it was in and around the edge of the box, you might have allowed that to play. I think he might have thought there was no danger. So you look at it and I don't know. It's a difficult one, isn't it? I think you'd want that. Yeah. If he is going to play on, brilliant. If he's not, we might be just give him a red card. But
yeah. It is a difficult one, to be fair. And Gailey, obviously, there'll be disappointment today, but equally, we've got another game to focus on Wednesday.
Yep, a big game. Play Millwall, don't they, on Wednesday? So they're a team that you think, in and around them in the league. Definitely a team that you can beat. Fingers crossed they can get a bit more experience back and get a few players back in and around them young lads. But I'm sure that the manager will pick them up and he'll pick the positives out, and they'll get back to it on Monday morning and hit the ground running again, because there's so many fixtures coming thick and fast with the schedule that they've got in this time. So yeah, they're disappointed today, but they can bounce straight back and get on a roll again.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the beauty of the Sky Bet Championship. Gailey, Craig, Dunny, thank you very much for joining us, and Huddersfield Town fans, thank you for watching.